with regards to individuation, like I was saying, it's a process of transformation whereby the personal unconscious is brought into consciousness. So there's this consistent theme of making what is unknown known to the individual. For example, by means of dreams, active imagination, or free association. Now, I'm going to be focusing mostly on the idea of free association because I'm going to be mostly going into individuation on a practical way when it comes down to what we can actually do in relation to our fears, our neurotic holding patterns, complexes, subjective kind of trauma responses and stuff, and how we can kind of take hold of them, grasp fear proactively, anxiety in a proactive way, to be able to actually use them to our advantage so that we can grow as individuals instead of, looking at dreams and just active imagination, which is more of a Jungian psychological method. And this process is to be assimilated into the whole personality. So it's about bringing unconsciousness into consciousness so that we understand and are self-aware fundamentally. Now, individuation is mistakenly seen as, like I was saying, very mystical, intellectual, but in practice is very much the opposite. Our limiting factors to personal growth are like I was saying, the neurotic holding patterns we have developed that limit our growth. Overcoming them, you could say, is the gateway to achieving individuation, which is self-actualization. It is a completely natural process. It's basically the purpose. Fundamentally, you could say the purpose of the individual is to go through this process because it's represented mythologically, mythopoetically. It's represented in all of history's greatest figures with regards to the hero's journey in every single way. So it's very much a natural process of integration. And is also, individuation also has a holistic healing effect on the person, both mentally, physically, socially, and environmentally, which is on the topic of bioenergetics, which is mostly never talked about with regards to individuation. So Carl Jung, of course, never gave any kind of way of looking at this. So to start off with, I'm just going to give you like a very basic way first to look at individuation in like a pictorial, practical, and religious way. So pictorially, individuation has always been kind of represented with the idea of the mandala, or the mandala, however you say it. And this is like a piece of art that is created through a form of meditation with colors and sand and different fine materials in Eastern tradition. And it's to try and represent the entire, to try and represent oneness in one complete totality. And what they do after, when they create this piece of art, they then destroy it so that it holds both order and chaos, it holds both duality within the process of creation itself. And that is wholeness, because it's holding everything within it. So when you have that, you can kind of get a pictorial way of looking at it. Now, a more kind of practical way of looking at it is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He was talked about stuff with the basic necessities with regards to physiological needs, safety needs, like it says, belongingness, esteem, and self-actualization being at the top. And this is all about practical realism, not kind of pseudo-spirituality, spiritual bypassing, because you have spiritual bypassing, which happens a lot with the idea of individuation, where people cut out the necessities for the ideal. And they believe that the ideal will bring the necessities and vice versa, all this type of stuff. And this is kind of like basically avoiding what is needed to be looked at first, which are the needs of the individual on a base level. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is just an illustration of needs to get to the point of individuation, which is super important because within the next couple of slides, I'm going to be merging that with the metaphysics of individuation itself. Now, the last one, which you could say is a religious or more spiritual way of looking at individuation, is through Jesus Christ. So Jesus Christ, the Son of God, through Christianity, represents individuation through the three stages of what he goes through. as the Son of God, which is one, crucifixion, two, the harrowing of hell, which isn't often talked about, and three, the resurrection. So these three processes represent, if you want to look at it psychologically, they represent each one of them. First being death, second being distress, and three being rebirth. These three things are the processes that you need to go through to become individuated, because distress makes the unconscious conscious, that you need to proactively accept stress and use distress to your advantage, because when we get into it, we can look at what is called the beta region paradox, which is a scientific empirical paradox that's been understood through science, that when people are put under distress, or when they're under stress more often, or conveniences are taken out of their life, comfortabilities are taken out, they're more likely to act or go into a place of action that is going to catalyze change for themselves. So we have to take that idea and apply it to ourselves when it comes to understanding how we can move and transform and individuate. So, like I was saying, individuated Son of God, Jesus Christ, death and rebirth, that's what Jesus Christ represents. And it's super fascinating, because I only realized this recently, because harrowing, the word harrowing, which is often referred to as the harrowing of hell, means distress, the distressing path through hell, you could say. Because that's what happens. Jesus dies on the cross, and he descends into hell for 3 days and 3 nights, and then he resurrects again. So you have this interesting dynamic going on, or a requirement of what transformation actually looks like.